Warning, the following program is designed for casual wrestling fans and is meant purely for entertainment. If you're SAWFT, proceed at your own risk. Viewer discretion is advised.
Brother, I'm going run a wild Hulk Hogan. If I like get some moment, I'll make sure it's an explosion. Cause lately I've been seeing stars trying to kick out on this joy cord. But it's no holds barred. Middle fingers like I'm Stone Cold.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Slappin' Me to Wrestling podcast. I am your host, WETOODEEP. This is our Friday episode, which means this is the episode where I am by myself and I just rant on what I'm feeling on the wrestling world. So we got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to talk about here in the CWC, the casual wrestling community. We've changed something here, and we've changed our attitude. We're ready. We're done playing nice, right? And Dirty D started his heel turn, changed from Notorious Nerdy D to the Notorious Dirty D, in effort to squash and his wording, bitch slap the IWC. And I was cool. I'm gonna participate in that. I'm gonna help him squash them out. But I wasn't fully committed to a heel turn. I was gonna try to be nice still with some of these people. I think I sort of intersect with some of that audience of the IWC. I'm a little bit less casual than him, so I was gonna let that be his major focus. But y'all, that was what I was going to do. Keyword, y'all. The heel turn's coming all the way around, right? WETOODEEP's taking the gloves off. I'm no longer gonna play nice. I'm no longer gonna hold back shots or pull punches. Nah. We going full throttle. You can't cancel someone who's uncancelable, right? I'll just keep coming back, right? And I'm not gonna be afraid to call out names. I'm not gonna be, we're coming. We're coming for all of y'all, right? We're coming for all of y'all. If y'all think something that I think is dumb, I'm calling it out. Right? Y'all can have your opinions. You can, and opinions are great to have, and we can discuss them. But I'm not gonna silence myself so that the IWC marks and the AEW stands can sit there and circle jerk themselves and have a great time, and then make me out to be like I'm the bad guy because I think logically about how wrestling is supposed to be. So that's where this episode's headed, right? But before we get there, let's take care of some housekeeping. First thing, links in the description. Expedia, WWE Shop, we partner with them. We get an affiliate link. You go through that link, you make a purchase, we get a small percentage of the purchase. We say that every show. If y'all use it, we appreciate you. It's not not required, right? But it would definitely help the show. The main thing I want to talk about is there's two things happening in about 16 days. At the start of April, two things are going to happen with the podcast. The first thing is we're changing the Thirsty Tuesday. We're going to change that idea, that concept with let me go ahead and just announce the winner because we didn't have a show on Tuesday. Liv Morgan did win that Thirsty Tuesday, which I kind of expected would be one of the favorites to win the whole thing. It is what it is. So that Thirsty Tuesday bracket will be the last one that's sort of run within like that type of format. We're still going to do brackets because I think they're fun and good content to discuss. So we're going to change Thirsty Tuesday to like a bracket battle type thing, right? So this first one, based on the suggestion from Kara in our Discord, we're going to do WWE wrestling themes. The brackets have been made. They're in our Discord. If you want to see them, go to the Discord. But the first Tuesday in April is when that bracket battle will start. We're going to take the rest of March off, reset, get everything set up, and then we'll start bracket battles on the first episode, the first Tuesday in April. Also starting in April, the main thing is we will move to 3 shows a week. You guys are getting more content out of me. But let me tell you how this is going to break down. Tuesday will be the same as it always is. Me and DJ Wavy D right here on the show talking about, it's going to be more so like how we typically run it, where it's a little bit more carefree, a little bit more laid back. It's more of me letting Wavy D talk about his opinions on the show, and I'll sort of facilitate that conversation, because Friday's going to be strictly rants, right? I won't break down Raw. I won't break down SmackDown. I won't break down NXT from an analytical review point of view. It's solely going to be, here's what I'm going to rant about that week. That's what the Friday show is. The Sunday show will be an overall breakdown of that week of wrestling. Whether it's AEW, if we tune into that, whether it's Monday Night Raw, whether it's SmackDown, NXT, if Evolve, if I feel like Evolve is worth talking about, because I think it's a good show, but I'm not exactly certain there's an audience who would care to listen about Evolve. So if you guys want me to break down what I think about Evolve, let me know. But that'll be the Sunday show. It'll sort of be like the Sunday wrap up of that week in wrestling. Me breaking down what I feel about where the stories are headed. But with that said, that starts in April. So let's tune into, where we're headed with this podcast, because there's a lot, right? So we're going to break down some AEW stuff. And I got a lot to talk about with AEW. I told you guys, I'm taking the gloves off here, right? Then we'll go over NXT Roadblock. Right, we'll talk about what I felt about Monday Night Raw, and then we'll head into my thoughts on where WrestleMania is headed. And then we got a three-peat. Our three-piece. You got a three-piece combo coming for react to that as we talk about 3 different things. We'll get to that here at the end of the show. But let's go ahead and break down AEW. Right, and this is where the gloves come off. Because so often AEW fans and wrestling fans in general, their excuses, you can't talk about it if you don't watch the show, or they assume that I'm some WWE shill, that right, or people who think like me, or someone like. I listened to JD from NY for the first time yesterday. I've never listened to a single one of his live streams or podcast episodes. I typically don't care about what someone like him thinks about, because he tends to be a little bit more reactionary. But I'll tell you something. I thoroughly enjoyed his episode. It's not enough to get me to subscribe to his stuff, but I will definitely check it out more often, because I think his finger is on the pulse, right? And a lot of AEW fans don't like JD because they think he's now paid off but that's always like the response by these AEW fans. Anytime someone critiques, if they're popular within the content creating space, Dirty D's even been accused of this. Oh, Triple H is sending you checks, and you're paid to talk about the way you're talked about. or when Bully Ray, like, I don't agree with everything Bully Ray does, and obviously Bully Ray knows how to draw a reaction, so I think he is sort of doing a gimmick at times. But Bully Ray, while he's on a Legends contract, I think people need to understand the Legends deal is just so that WWE can put him in the video game and sell merchandise and put him on the reality show. He's not obligated to talk positive about. I mean, obviously he will. I don't see a reason why he would be negative. I think everything Bully Ray says is how he feels in the moment. And right, and I think everything JD says is how he feels in the moment he's saying them, and everything I say is how I feel in that moment, right? So, and I know a lot of people like to hold what people say against them, but I need y'all to understand what I'm saying right now is how I feel in this moment. I could feel differently about the product in 2 weeks. I could feel differently about the product in a year, right? So there's always a chance for the product to redeem itself. But what I say right now, right? Because that tends to get thrown back at me like, oh, you used to say, you said this 2 months ago. Bro, I don't even remember what I said on this podcast 2 weeks ago. Right? I know how I feel in the moment and how my opinion feels with the ever evolving world of information that we get thrown at us in the content space. Right? So I'm gonna talk about AEW, and I also think these AEW stands need to realize not everyone who talks about AEW in a way that I'm about to talk about it hasn't watched the show. I may not have watched live, but I've watched clips and I've watched people break it down, and so I'm fairly caught up with what's going on. Right? I may not have actually physically watched the show, but I've seen clips of the show. I've seen promos on, AEW posts, just like WWE does, clips of segments on their YouTube page that I have viewed. So I've watched parts and bits and pieces of the show. I'm not uneducated about what's going on your product. Right? But even if I was, you're not going to silence me from talking about the product from a business perspective, but I'm going to go farther than that, from a booking perspective, from a logic perspective. So that's exactly what we're about to do. The gloves are coming off, and it may not be as serious as I made it sound in the Discord. I said in the Discord I was going to rip the fans in AEW a new one. That's what I intend to do. It may not be as serious. Let me just say, I'm a little bit just annoyed with AEW fans. And I've always said this from the beginning. I've always said this from the jump. When AEW was created, I was on board. I was. You can ask anyone. I was just as excited as James and Cody was that AEW was being created. And I've said this numerous times because WWE's product was trash in 2019. And we did need something that felt fresh and was new. And it was a little bit exciting to see some of these other people who WWE wouldn't hire work in this company, right? But almost immediately, two things stuck out to me that made this product very, very hard to support. Almost immediately, right? And the first was the lack of actual experience that a lot of the wrestlers in AEW at the time had running a TV show. And you could tell in the production. And that was almost forgivable. Like, that's not even an excuse anymore. But the main thing, right? The main thing that AEW had, that I have against AEW that keeps me from fully committing to being an AEW fan, is the fans. The fans are the problem. Because the fans want wrestling done in such a way that keeps AEW almost sealed off from the mainstream casual audience. It's for the sickos, right? And let's just be honest. If you're going to book for the sickos, you're not getting higher than where you're at in the ratings right now. Oh, you said we're keeping it. No. Y'all keep bringing the Raw ratings up from Netflix, like it actually matters. So we're gonna bring ratings for AEW on TV, like right, because we don't get the max numbers. Those don't get released, but it's still showing on TV, and it's not doing good. Right? It's not. I just the gloves are coming off. We're talking about. So let's break down Revolution. Right? Let's break down Revolution. I got 3 things to talk about with Revolution. The first one is this. I just want to say thank you to AEW. I want to say thank you for AEW for putting the final nail in the coffin of Kayfabe. It's finally dead. It's 6 feet under. I don't want to hear any AEW or any IWC fan at all talk about Kayfabe anymore. When The Rock and Cody Rhodes are backstage drinking Terramana on Instagram, or when Jade and Bianca and Naomi are all backstage hanging out on Instagram, or the NXT girls post another TikTok of them dancing, and you got Kalani standing right next to Jada Parker. I don't want to hear about Kayfabe anymore, because you guys 100% killed anything that was left of Kayfabe last night, Sunday night, when you interviewed an actress, and for whatever reason didn't give her proper training on what not to say or what to say, didn't rehearse the interview, didn't think that maybe interviewing this could come out the wrong way. Not that I care right now, because I have a mixed opinion on the actual quote, because basically what she said was, one of the things that I learned is that you all know who's winning before you actually do the match, right? Which to a normal wrestling fan, a grown-up adult, would say, well, no shit, Sherlock. Welcome to 2025. Most of us knew that already. And I'm not going to be one of those people who complain because, oh, there's kids in the crowd. No, stop lying to your kids, right? They can enjoy the product still knowing that it's not 100% real, right? It's sort of the same attitude I take to Christmas and Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy. Stop lying to your kids, right? Because I have an actual like philosophical reason why I believe that. And it's because if you lie to them about something simple like Santa Claus, that doesn't change the outcome of Christmas. They're still going to get gifts, but they would be more grateful to you if they recognize that you had the sacrifice to buy them, and not some magical fat man that came through the chimney that doesn't exist on most houses anymore. That some magical fat man broke into the house and left presents that somehow he created by some magical, you see what I'm saying? If you lie to your kids about that, when it comes to more difficult situations where they need to lean on you, they may not have the trust to come to you because you've lied to them on simple things. That's my philosophical reasoning for not that y'all asked for it, right? But stop lying to your kids. Kayfabe has been dead for a while. We all know that wrestling is a lot of content creators don't like saying the F word. They don't like saying fake. Wrestling is fake. It's scripted. And so we all know that. But what tends to happen is we do have the fans in the IWC that hold on to some form of kayfabe and then complain when it gets completely obliterated. So here's the thing. You buried it last night. Don't ever bring it back. You can't. First off, that was just a dumb thing to do with right? And what's crazy is the next night WWE had a celebrity in the crowd, and it was clear that they went over the segment, right? And he didn't have an open mic. They told him what he could and could not say, and he said what would get the crowd to pop. And Andrew Schultz worked the crowd, right? It was right. But while we're on this topic of Queen of the Ring, where you had everyone but like you had an actual actress in that movie, Camille. She's on your roster. And it completely blows my mind why you continually, AEW, do not put Camille on anything to promote this movie. When was the last time Camille was ever on TV? She's on the roster. You're promoting this. You're holding a pay-per-view, which I thoroughly believe the day it. Why would you not put Camille in a match here? This would have been a perfect time. Instead of putting Momo, I want to go to sleep, or Momo, I want to be somebody, Momo, I am a nobody in this match against Mercedes. Why would you not tell the story of Camille turning on Mercedes and then Camille getting a title match in a way to promote the movie that she's in? That would have made more sense. That would have gotten more views. That right? Than some random nobody, Momo, I am nobody, to the casual audience, to a mainstream audience. Camille didn't have to win the match if the goal is to keep Mercedes champion. But why would you not put Camille on the card with the movie she was promoting that came out the same week of your pay-per-view? What are we doing? WWE, let's say, like Batista's movies all the time get airtime, and he's not even part of the company anymore. But let's say that, I 100% believe that Happy Gilmore will be promoted on Raw because it is a Netflix movie. But I do believe Becky Lynch is in that movie. I thoroughly am convinced at this point, because I don't think Becky will show up for Mania. But with the July release, I think there could be a push to get Becky Lynch onto TV to help promote Happy Gilmore too on Netflix. I think that could be where we're headed, as we're headed toward like a Money in the Bank, to have Becky Lynch help promote, right? Or let's say Bianca Belair or Jade Cargill or any of them went to go film in a movie. I know Naomi was in the movie, but so I don't know how much they could or could not promote within WWE for that movie. Like, I don't know if they had the rights to promote the movie or not, right? So I'm understand why they wouldn't promote it with Naomi. But if you're going to promote the show, if you're going to promote the movie, have the woman. You had Toni Storm, I think, who was in the movie, and she was partially promoting it. But why not have Camille do the same thing? Right? To me, it just doesn't make any sense. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. Right? My next thing with this card, with Revolution, is we got to talk about this main event. But we'll actually talk about that last, right? Let's talk about the fan reaction to Revolution, right? These AEW dumbasses, these fans that watch the show every pay-per-view they ever do, like I feel like this is a cycle with AEW fans, right? Because there's a lot of times like they haven't had a pay-per-view since December. So it's been 3 months since they've had a pay-per-view. And so in that 3 months, they're itching to be like, oh, this is the best thing we've ever done. And so they come out and they overreact with everything. They They don't stop and think logically on a lot of things. And so you got these marks out here, and they always love to compare the AEW pay-per-view to the closest WWE pay-per-view. And Elimination Chamber was the week before, 2 weeks before. And so instantly you started seeing this like, oh, Revolution, I've seen enough. Revolution is greater than Elimination Chamber. And from a pure action standpoint in the ring, you might be correct, right? I'm not going to sit here and act like Elimination Chamber. I think Elimination Chamber was a 10 out of 10 event. I do. But I probably don't think I would have given that same rating to Revolution had I watched it live. But I understand where they're coming from in terms of, oh, well, from a match standpoint, from a card standpoint, this may have been one of their better cards, and I'm sure it was an enjoyable night. Like I've seen a lot of people, even people who critique AEW a lot, say that this was a really good show. So I'm not going to sit here and try to be edgy and be like, oh, it was awful. But can the marks calm down for a minute? Can the marks calm down for just 1 minute? Objectively, this show is not better than Elimination Chamber. And here's why. If we put all bias aside, if I'm not paid by Triple H. Triple H, if you want to send me a check that people may think that I'm getting paid, Triple H, I would love a check. Look, you don't even have to pay a lot. If you just sent it, if I just received a check from WWE HQ and it just had the number 50,000 on it, that's all I'd ask for, right? That's all I asked for. But I'm not getting paid over here, right? This is me just being a free thinker. I'm removing all bias. This is looking at both shows and the results of both shows and asking one question: which one of these results, which one of these cards will be remembered in 20 years? Were there any moment? Now I'll say this: I don't think this Elimination Chamber is remembered in 20 years if the ending of Elimination Chamber didn't happen. And that's the single moment. That moment alone is going to carry this event. The John Cena heel turn is going to carry Elimination Chamber 2025 into one of the most remembered moments in WWE history. And in 20 years, we will still be talking about the moment John Cena went bad. We're going to talk about this for 20 years. No one's going to remember Revolution 2025 by the time you get to Revolution 2026, except for the people who use it as like trivia night, encyclopedia type knowledge, where they just remember who won the matches. But there wasn't a single moment that you can put in a moment's Hall of Fame in wrestling, right? Like there are certain moments in wrestling that even if the rest of the event was trash, this moment, right? So Hogan lifting Andre, Hogan joining the NWA, Cena turning heel, Daniel Bryan winning the championship, right? There are certain moments, right, where the events surrounding it. So let me give like a prime example. When we talk about King of the Ring 1998, do any of you remember who won that tournament? Does anybody remember who won King of the Ring 1998? And unless you have an encyclopedia as a brain, I don't think you do. It was almost 30 years ago. So I highly doubt anyone remembers. I'm pretty sure I looked it up, and if I remember correctly, it was Ken Shamrock. Does anybody give two actual fucks that Ken Shamrock won King of the Ring 1998? Obviously not, because that's not the moment we talk about from that pay-per-view. What's the moment we talk about from that pay-per-view? Mick Foley getting thrown off Hell in a Cell by The Undertaker. That's a moment that lasts for generations that we talk about. No one's talking about Ken Shamrock winning King of the Ring. right? At the end of Elimination Chamber, let's just be honest, no one's really even going to talk about John Cena winning the Elimination Chamber. Or how even someone like Bianca Belair winning the Elimination Chamber, or any of the other results that happened in that match, in that, because it all gets overlooked by the actual moment that's going to be talked about, and that's John Cena turning heel. Now compare that to Revolution. Is there a single moment on that card that stands out just enough that people are going to talk about it in a positive way as a moment that made wrestling history? No. And that's fine, because a lot of pay-per-views, even things WWE has done in its existence, there are a lot of shows in WWE's existence that aren't memorable. Not every show is going to have them, but when we objectively look at, is Revolution or Elimination Chamber the better event, I tend to look objectively at what's going to be remembered, and there's not a single moment that I believe will be remembered by Revolution 2026 on Revolution 2025. I think Elimination Chamber 2025 will be remembered for John Cena turning heel, and I think to a particular audience, Jade Cargill returning and coming and getting a piece of Naomi, I think will be remembered. That was a really good moment. Right? So can we calm down for a minute? Think objectively, think logically, think rationally. Stop thinking emotionally. That's what I've come to a realization that a lot of wrestling fans, whether you're hardcore IWC, and I would even say a lot of people in the CWC, they think in the moment with emotion and not through rational, logical thought. And maybe that's where I differ from, in my opinion, from a lot, because I think that's part of the reason why I differ with even some people in the CWC, is they watch and they have like an emotional reaction to certain things. And then I sit there and I have my emotional reaction, but then I pause and I think and I look things through, and then I try to think about it logically, right? And I'm not saying I'm better than anyone because of that, but I think that a lot of wrestling fans watch wrestling emotionally, and they don't and I think, but a lot of it, and we'll actually, when we get to react to that, I'm going to give you an example of this very statement of, I think a lot of wrestling fans today, there is a subsection of newer fans that have come into wrestling in the last few years. And I'm all fine for allowing new fans. Absolutely, I want the product to grow. But I think there's a lot of them who don't understand wrestling, in the history of wrestling, and how wrestling is done, and how wrestling has always been run for the last 100 years. And they want to try to change certain things, and it's just not how it works. And they want the old heads to go away, like Bully Ray, because Bully Ray talks about wrestling from an older sort of how it's always been run standpoint, right? But they also don't understand storytelling. I think there's a large subsection of mostly IWC fans who don't understand how to tell a story. And I'll give you an example of this when we go to react to that. But my final thing on Revolution that I want to talk about, right, is creative control. Historically, has always turned out to be a negative thing in professional wrestling. There's a reason Vince McMahon hardly ever gave anyone 100% creative control of their character. Because let's understand wrestling. This is what I mean by people don't understand. Understand background politics, right? This is your livelihood we're talking about, right? This is your livelihood. There's ways wrestling works. If you're not on the top of the card, right, or if you're not on TV, people will forget about you. If you're losing, people will forget about you. Let's be honest. A lot of wrestlers have egos, but they have to. That's how you survive. It's a dog-eat-dog world in the wrestling world, especially the independent scene. But definitely once you get to an area like WWE where you're getting paid the minimum WWE contract in the year of 2025, I believe, if I have the right information, is like $350,000. That's the minimum main roster contract that you're getting paid. The minimum main roster contract, $350,000. Right? There are people who don't want to lose that. That's comfortable living. Let me be honest with you. If I got a job offer for $350,000 to come work for WWE on the main roster, there would be very little complaining to me about money. There would be very little complaining to me about much of anything. I'm going to just come in and do my job. Right? But there comes a point where you're, and we saw this with Carmella. Right? We see this with Carmella where she wasn't on TV for a better part of 3 years. There comes a point where they don't have anything for you and they just cut you. Right? And so you have to have an ego. You have to have the will and the willingness to protect yourself. And so I don't necessarily think being an egomaniac is a bad thing. But Adam Copeland and Jon Moxley and Mercedes Moné are actively killing the product. And they're 3 superstars who have 100% creative control. When was the last time Adam Copeland lost clean? Someone actually tell me, when was the last time Adam Copeland, or Cope, whatever the fuck they're calling him now, when was the last time he lost a singles match clean? It was Christian Cage, and that was like at the very beginning of his run. Name one person Copeland at 50 years old has put over in the industry, in his run in AEW. Name one person he's put over. I know he ran Ricky Saints out of the damn building. Name one person this man, Adam Copeland, has put over in the year 2025 when he's 50-something years old. Not a single person. He hasn't put anybody over. Name a single person Jon Moxley has put over since he's been in this current run. Right? Jon Moxley may be actively killing the product. They have to take the belt off of him at Dynasty. The fan base is leaving. It has to go to Swerve. He's the most popular character in the men's roster right now that they have in the main event scene. It cannot, and if you go to All In with Jon Moxley as your champion, that's just bad business. You have to give the belt to Swerve. You have to. Right? Mercedes Moné. Name one person Mercedes Moné has put over in almost 365 days she's been in the company as TBS champion. No one. She had a chance to put over Camille, but she didn't. They're going to give her another opportunity with Billy Starks. And she's not going to put, guys, let's just be honest. She's not putting over Billy Starks. What's the long-term plan with Billy Starks fighting Mercedes Moné? They're going to feed her Billy the Kid because she's 20 years old. It's going to be another victory Mercedes can say she has. Billy's not going to say nothing because she's 20 years old, wrestling in the second biggest wrestling company in the world, gaining valuable experience against probably someone she looked up to as a kid in Mercedes Moné. Probably was a fan of Mercedes. and when she was in WWE, right? But let's just be honest. We all know where this is going. This is all definitely coming to that Athena can wrestle Mercedes at All In. But do we really think Athena's going to? Do you really think Mercedes Moné is going to drop the belt to Athena? No, because she has 100% creative control, and she has an ego, and she thinks she's better than she is, and she's right. She's on a quest to hold all the gold, but except for the one that really matters, which is the one Tony Storm has, right? So I was gonna take the angle of, well, Adam Copeland's an egomaniac, but then I thought about it. Everyone's an egomaniac, but they're given the ability to be egomaniacs and to ruin the product solely because, and this is where it all comes back. It all stems from Tony Khan not understanding how to run a business, especially in the wrestling world, not learning from history with Hulk Hogan in it and the NWO. This is not going to turn out well. Right. But this main event of Revolution, this main event, I haven't even seen it, but I've heard it described. I've seen it being talked about. AEW fans are shitting on it. This is just a clusterfuck of bad booking. And in the process of a week, you've made Christian Cage look like a bumbling dumbass. There is zero credibility that Christian Cage, and I'm going to go ahead and use the word, you've made Christian Cage in the last week, Sunday and on Wednesday, his explanation as to what happened, you've made this dude look like he's fucking retarded. Right? So, for those who may not have seen Revolution, it was Cope versus Mox, right? And Christian Cage has the Walmart clearance section version of the Money in the Bank. Some random tournament they ran because Tony Khan fucking loves tournaments, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And he has this contract that he can cash in, but like part of the contract itself is that the contract doesn't actually take effect until someone signs it. And so technically Christian Cage won the contract, but there was like an angle where like Jay White was going to take the contract and sign it, and it was going to be his cash in, which again is just a convoluted mess of bullshit. And then they do this where Christian signs the contract, he's cashing in, and he goes to cash in on Copeland, and John Moxley, now because it's a triple threat, John Moxley I think puts Christian in a submission move or rolls him up. I don't fully remember the finish, but Moxley retains, and you make Christian look like a bumbling idiot. You make the gimmick, the first time this thing was ever won and cashed in, it loses all credibility because the guy who won it lost the opportunity. And you just make the whole thing look like stupidity. The gimmick's trash. Christian looks like a fucking idiot. The match itself was bad. And we'll get to Christian Cage, what he says on Dynamite. But let me finish this thought with Cope and Mox. The match was so bad, Tony Khan thought, let's do it again. And we're going to do it in Omaha, Nebraska, where definitely people will care about. And it's going to be like a, like a steel cage match or something like that. And solely so that both of the competitors, Mox and Cope, can suck out all the momentum in the arena, and there's at least a gimmick so that both of them can bleed all over the place, and the sickos can jizz their pants about how great the match was because there was blood. Meanwhile, the creative for the main event scene is completely convoluted, makes no fucking sense. Who knows who's going to be the next contender? Well, we do know it's going to be Swerve at Dynasty because he beat Ricochet in a match at Revolution where we're just handing out number one contenderships. Right? So we're going to run the worst match you've probably ever run in your life. And this is what I'm talking about. Oh, well, it's better than eliminate. Well, no one's going to remember the 5-star matches that happened. The only thing people are talking about right now about Revolution is how bad the ending was. Unless you're a super mark and you're trying to forget it, the only thing podcasters and dirt sheets are talking about is how bad. And the general overall thought is that was a fucking bad ending. Now compare that to the ending of Elimination Chamber, and now you see what I'm talking about thinking objectively. Right? Wrestling fans and really anyone who watches TV shows in general, you remember the last thing they show you. So if the last thing you show me is a bunch of convoluted bullshit in a world title picture where the two members in the match have 100% creative control, obviously neither of them wanted to lose the match. And so they find Christian Cage and say, hey, we're gonna dump this contract that you have. We really don't want you to have it. We really don't want to run the gimmick no more. It's getting kind of old. So we're just going to have you waste the cash in and we're going to make you look like a fumbling idiot. And then we're going to try to make a story out of it. So that gets me to Dynamite on Wednesday when Christian Cage comes out, looks like a complete fucking retard in his reasoning here, where he says, oh, no, I signed the contract to cash in on Copeland. I didn't know it was going to make it a triple threat. Has Christian Cage never seen cash-ins ever in the history of any company? Or are we just being completely fucking retarded here? Copeland wasn't the champion. So why would you cash in on Copeland? That makes no sense. There's no logic to that. Who the fuck approved that script? Or was there no script and they just said, Christian, go out and do something? Was there a production meeting? I highly doubt it. Did anyone look at what Christian was going to say on their TV? Tony Khan, what are you doing? You made probably your biggest heel in your company. Let's just be genuinely honest. Christian Cage may have been the biggest heel in the company, and now he looks like a complete, utter retard. Cancel me if you want. I don't give a fuck. He looked retarded out there. That's the dumbest reasoning I've ever heard in my life. Oh, I thought I was fighting Cope. No, bro, he wasn't even the champion, dude. You don't cash in on the challenger. What the? Right. So then we get Will Ocean Spray in the middle of the ring, who he's blabbering about something, and then he points to the rest. He points to the All In. Excuse me. Sorry. He must have thought he wanted to actually grind for a minute, and he pointed at a sign that's in the. He must have thought he was in WWE and he was grinding for a minute and pointed at the WrestleMania. No, he was pointing at All In banner, the Walmart Temu version of the WrestleMania sign that they've had hung up for like the last 6 months in their arenas, trying to promote this All In Texas show. And then he announced, oh, we're going to do this Owen Cup tournament, which they've done before, so I'm not going to like critique it, but they're doing a tournament now for Kenny Omega's challenge. They do tournaments. What's up with the damn tournaments? Let me tell you why bookers, and Tony Khan's not the only one. I've been highly critical of how of the uncreative booking Triple H does. You know who else also loves tournaments? Triple H. What is up with the damn tournaments? Right. And so this is the point, right? You're doing a tournament. to figure out who's going to be the opponent at Dynasty for Kenny Omega. You can't just find somebody to put against Kenny Omega, because if the long-term goal is to get Kenny Omega versus Okada at All In Texas, if that's the long-term goal I'm being told they're going to, and all the fans know it, why the fuck would I care about who wins this tournament if I know he's going to lose at Dynasty? You're essentially telling all of the competitors in the match, Hechicero, Orange Cassidy, this wild card, which we'll talk about in a minute, the Beast Mortos, Mark Briscoe, Mark Davis, and whoever the else, Jellyfuck Magoo, or whoever the fuck else is in this tournament. You're basically telling all of them. Ricochet's in one in a match. I forgot who he's I forgot the last dude. Sorry. You're basically telling these guys, hey, we're going to put you in this tournament. You're going to face Kenny Omega. You're going to get this dream match, but you're going to lose. Right? Right? You're going to lose. And it's just pure uncreative. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't know how to tell stories. If it were me, I would figure out a way to get Omega and Okada in a feud right now. They don't have to fight at Dynasty. Kenny Omega can be attacked by somebody. I mean, it could easily just be he calls out Okada and the Young Bucks attack him again, or Michael Nakazawa. Isn't Nakazawa part of the company still? Wasn't he running around with the Elite? Or Brandon Cutler? I don't know if he's still there. I don't even know if the Young Bucks are still in the company. Where the hell did they go? Maybe, I'm starting to think JD might be right. Maybe they recognize that Tony Khan has completely ruined the vision they had in 2019 of what this company was supposed to be, and he's become a total money mark, and they don't want to come back. It wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But tournaments mean you don't have plans. You don't have a story. You're just going to try to throw shit at the wall. What is the purpose of winning a tournament? Like the Owen tournament, at least you get some sort of belt. But what's the point of winning this belt, this tournament to go face Kenny Omega? To go lose? Congratulations, you win, but now the prize you won is a loss at a pay-per-view against Kenny Omega. Why not put Okada in here, right? But then that brings me to Mike Bailey. Speedball. I love Speedball Mike Bailey. I have no critiques about Speedball Mike Bailey's style or how he is. You know what my critique is? There's 50 other people who do the same shit that Speedball Mike Bailey does. He comes in, he wins. He's probably not going to win this tournament or this four-way, which means he's not going to take the pin. But it's also a bad situation to put in a debuting superstar where, right? Because typically if you're going to debut a new superstar as the wild card, they win the whole tournament, right? But you're not going to put Speedball versus Okada on Dynasty. Not Okada, excuse me, Omega. Speedball versus Omega at Dynasty. You're not going to, just to have Speedball lose, you're not going to do that. I think Tony Khan has enough common sense to not do that. Right? I actually do agree with Junkyard James that this will be Mark Davis. But you know what would be the greatest thing for them to do with Speedball Mike Bailey right now? Have him join the Callis family. Have him immediately turn heel. We all know him, if you know him, from his TNA work, and he's all smiley and fun, and basically he's generic wrestler number one. His entire gimmick, just like most AEW wrestlers, is I'm a fighter. I like to fight. I'll take on any challenger. I just want to fight, right? That's basically his gimmick. Have him turn heel. Start a heel turn right now. Right? We get noted. We see him. We see him in the debut. He gets a good pop. He gets a good debut match against the Beast Mortos. Have him immediately turn heel in this 4-way. Have him win the 4-way, but immediately turn heel. Join Don Callis. Or give him a mouthpiece, because he's not the greatest on the mic. Have him immediately turn heel. I think that would benefit Mike Bailey. I really do. Because if not, he's just going to be generic wrestler number 27 on an AEW roster full of generic wrestlers who, when this tournament is over, will just go back in 2-3 months and just be searching for TV time. He'll be fighting random collision matches, maybe even demoted to ROH. This is just Tony Khan pulling out another toy wrestler in his sandbox that he has zero plan to long-term get over. Tournaments are uncreative. It shows a lack of planning. And just like I complain about Triple H running tournaments, and just like I complain about Triple H running random triple threats and 8-man tags and all of this stupid bullshit, tournaments mean you don't have a long-term plan. You don't know, right? Triple H just ran one with the U.S. title, right? And I completely shit on it, right? You remember that. Like, I'm consistent here, right? It's uncreative booking because you don't have a plan on how to go from point A to point B within 3 to 4 weeks, right? You could easily find an opponent that wants to fight Kenny Omega without doing a tournament. I don't see how hard that is to come up with. Like, you could literally you know how you do this? Kenny Omega's out there looking like Surfer Bro. And he looked like, I'm going to be dead honest with you. Kenny Omega looked like a fan in the middle of the ring on Wednesday. He was in normal casual clothes, shorts and a t-shirt, the belt around his waist. He looked like a fan. Like, you could have put him front row and he would have looked like a fan. Right? He looked no different than any of the fans in the audience. Probably a little bit slimmer than most, right? But hey, we ain't going to be here to hate on fan bases, right? You could have had someone, like quite literally any heel on the roster, come out while he's giving this promo to start the show and attack him, and that's his dynasty opponent. That's literally all you needed to do. But instead, because you don't know how to create stories and because you want to deliver dream matches, you could have easily debuted Speedball by having him attack Kenny Omega and then announcing he's part of the Don Callis family, and you didn't need to do the whole tournament, and you made Speedball look like a legitimate threat. But instead, we're running tournaments because we want matches. Matches mean more than stories, apparently, in AEW is what I've been told. We've sort of already talked about it, but Mox, Mercedes, and Cope are killing AEW. They hardly put anyone over. But let's compare that to probably the number one star in the company right now, Tony Storm. Now, I've gone on record. I'm not the hugest fan of this gimmick. I think it works in AEW solely because there's no other gimmick in AEW that is as look. I'm not gonna front and be like Tony Storm's not over. She's definitely over with the AEW crowd. But I do think the gimmick's a little strange, a little weird. It's not my cup of tea. But I think it only works in the over sort of like sexual. Right, her promos are annoying. To me, I actually feel like Tony Storm's promos are over sexualized. She talks about like tits out, and that she wants orgies, and we don't need that. We don't need that. Come on, guys. What are we doing? We don't need that. But at least Tony Storm has put someone over in the last 365 days. She's made Mariah May in the last 365 days. She has single-handedly made Mariah May a multi-millionaire. You know what I'm her value, Mariah May's value from the time she stepped in the company till today has skyrocketed. If this was the stock market Anyone who put their money on Mariah May when she debuted, it was selling low. And anyone who put their money in that stock is reaping very good rewards, because Mariah may be the actual number one star in the company right now. All thanks to Toni Storm. Has Mercedes done anything like that? Mercedes has the opportunity right now to put over someone like Billy Starks, who's young, decent in the ring, decent on the mic, has a decent following of the fan base who enjoys her, of the 19 fans that watch ROH. Billy Starks. I mean, I saw Billy Starks live when I went to a Collision taping. They were filming ROH. She's not bad. She has a fan base. She's popular within the AEW circle. She has a unique look. She's decent on the mic, right? So I have 4 criteria on how to judge a wrestler, right? Can you promo? These are all on a 10-point scale, by the way. 10 points for each category, right? Can you promo? Can you go in the ring? Is your look unique? Do you look like a fighter? Or and if you don't look like a fighter, like, do you have a unique look? Right? Are you generic wrestler, creator wrestler number 7? Or do you have a unique look like Rhea Ripley, right? And then the last one is, can you get yourself over? And how good you can do that, right? And I think Billy Starks averages out around a 6 out of 10 on each category, right? I think she's a genuine, but she's like 20 years old. She has a lot of potential. And Mercedes Moné has the ability to say, I'm going to fight her at Dynasty, and I'm going to put her over. And if she does that, I'll come on here and say, Mercedes, good job. But I highly doubt she will. I highly doubt she will. You can make a superstar out of Billy Starks. Or you could let her lose on her debut on the AEW main roster and potentially ruin her. It's up to you, Mercedes. Do you want to create a superstar? Do you want to benefit the business? Or do you only think about yourself? Right? Do we actually think Billy the Kid that's going to be my nickname for her? Do we actually think Billy the Kid is going to win this match? I don't. Right? My next little thing is, you got Harley Cameron, right? Talking about stars, right? Harley Cameron has, over the last 3 months, gotten herself over 100% organically through the puppet, guitar, ventriloquism with the puppet. She's gotten herself over with the crowd. She's a hot, attractive, talented woman who has gotten over. So the obvious thing to do for Tony Khan is to put her in a fucking mask, pair her with Hologram, who absolutely no one cares about in AEW except for Tony Khan. This is his little puppet, his little toy that he created. His masterpiece of his creation is Hologram. What are we doing, Tony? What are we doing? So in the end, this is just the first segment. This is going to be a long show. In the end, let's just be honest. This company fucking sucks. You're losing constantly to the third brand in WWE in the ratings. It's consistent now. NXT is beating AEW Dynamite every single week. And we'll talk about Roadblock here in a minute. Maybe 20. Right? But you're losing consistently in the ratings because people are no longer interested in the shit show. And when I say people, I mean the normal wrestling fan base, the casuals. It doesn't even have to be the like super casuals, but the general mainstream appeal of AEW is not there. Why? Because Tony Khan consistently books for the sickos. and it's become a shit show. So I hope the sickos enjoy the ride to the bottom, because there is a business principle that I thoroughly believe in. It's believed by a lot of business executives. If you're not growing, which AEW is not, you're dying. If you're not growing, and this is, you can use this in life. If you're not growing as a person, if you're not building yourself, you're dying. If you're not better than you were the day before, you're dying. You're stagnant. Everyone else around you, right? WWE is getting better. TNA is getting better. The independent scene, solely because of WWE and WWE ID, it's getting better. Wrestling is hot right now because of WWE, and it seems like the only thing that's not getting better, is not growing, is AEW. You can't use, oh, we're a young company. You're 6 years into this. Most companies, like you could use that excuse for the first 2 to 3 years of why you weren't making a profit, because starting a business has a lot of upfront cost, right? But you're 6 years into this now. Most new businesses start making money and start going from the red into the green by year 5. You're 6 years into this. Now, I don't know what your finances are, but I highly doubt you've spent a hell of a lot more money than you've brought in. Like, I highly, highly guarantee that's the case. You spent a hell of a lot more money than you've brought in. And the product's not better. It was good in like 2020, 2021. It was going, right? You had guys all around you. People were into AEW, but those people left when Tony Khan turned this into ECW and ZZW, and let's do tournaments, and let's do lucha. Like, what's up with the lucha all the damn time, right? And part of me wants to say, well, it's because they were in LA, which is stupid. Just and WWE does it too a lot of times. When they're in like mainly Hispanic areas, they put the Hispanic talent on that no one else in the audience gives two shits about. I'm sorry, lucha wrestling doesn't work in America. No one cares about it. It's a beautiful art form. It is. I'm not going to sit here and say it's bad. It's a beautiful art form. But no one in the mainstream America, United States audience actually cares about lucha wrestling. We just don't. In both companies, because WWE does it too. Triple H does it too. Like, this is why I say Triple H and Tony Khan book pretty fucking similar. Which is why it always amazes me when parts of the CWC support Triple H, but don't support Tony Khan, because they book very, very, very similar. Tournaments over uses of tricks and tropes and special announcements and luchadors, they book very, very similar. Use of D-list celebrities, or in WWE's case, B-list celebrities that, most people maybe don't know, but right. At the end of the day, if you're going to continue to book for the sickos, you're going to get the same result you have right now. You're going nowhere. You're not growing. You're dying. And I hope you enjoy the ride to the bottom. All right, let's move on from AEW. I think I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish with that. Right? So let's go over NXT Roadblock. We finally got to the point of the show where we're going to talk about NXT Roadblock. All right. NXT, I'm just going to genuinely say this statement again. NXT is the most entertaining and consistent show on TV, and I'm not the only one in the CWC has said it. I've gotten a stamp of approval from Mike, Milwaukee Mike, and B-Master, and a lot of other guys now in the CWC Discord that are finally on board with me. NXT is the most consistent and the most entertaining wrestling show on TV. I've even convinced Dirty D to maybe take a shot at watching it, right? But let's talk about Roadblock. Within a process of 2 hours, NXT on a Tuesday night put on a PLE level event. So we start with the Hardy Boys versus Fraxium for the TNA Tag Team Championships. And if there was any belt I thought was going to change hands on Tuesday night, it would have been this one. It didn't. We had a really, really good starting match. Really good, high energy. Fraxium are great. The Hardys look good for their age. I'm not a big Hardy Boys fan. I'm not. Just like I'm not a big Dudley Boys fan. Just like I'm not a huge Edge and Christian fan when it comes to tag team wrestling. I think those three teams, I've said this numerous times, I think they're highly overrated because of the match styles they were in and nostalgia, right? I do think there have been a lot better teams since then and even better teams before then in terms of like best tag teams of all time. I just think from a nostalgia aspect, a lot of people like the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian because of TLC, right? In the tables matches and in the ladder matches and all of that, right? I think there's a nostalgia level to how we remember it. When we really look back, I don't necessarily know if they should be top 5 tag teams of all time, right? Especially when you had teams since then like the New Day and the Usos that have definitely paired better than all 3 of those teams, right? And then Harlem Heat, I think, was better. And that was before sort of the TLC days, right? That was in WCW. I think the Horsemen, I know that's a faction, but DX was, I think DX even has some of that like nostalgia thing. I don't necessarily know if DX was all that good. Same with the New Age Outlaws. Like I look back at them and I'm like, they're fun, they're entertaining, but they were a product of their time. And I think like the New Day works I think the New Day would work in any generation. Whereas I don't necessarily think DX works in every generation. So I think the Usos work in any generation. Right, you see what I'm saying? So, but there's that, right? So the Hardys look good for their age. They retain. Very good match. Surprising match. We then move on to Roxanne versus Jordan Grace, which was another good match. Probably the worst of the 5 on the card, but I didn't expect much out of it. From the rumors, though, this was Roxanne Perez's last NXT match. Which is interesting to me. I don't believe it. I don't. I think that is just a smoke screen. I think she has one more at Stand and Deliver. And we're actually I'll give you my prediction for the Stand and Deliver card. When I'm done going over this show, right? But the first 2 matches pretty good, right? We then get Oba, Femi, and Moose. And I kind of figured this would main event. I kind of figured Julia and Stephanie would main event. This match, Oba versus Moose, was match of the night. This was match of the night. Now there's a different moment of the night, but this was match of the night. Oba Femi is a beast, dude. And so, like Dirty D in his podcast, he released his podcast at like midnight. The Thursday night, midnight. It was midnight my time, but it was Thursday night his time, right? And so I watched it before I went to bed. And so he came out and he did my little hot take. He does like a little CWC hot take thing, and my hot take was basically NXT is the most consistent and entertaining show, like I've consistently said, and would die on that hill. And he said, you know what? You've said it. Old me would say, no, you're the only one that's saying it. I'm not going to believe you. But now that it's got stamped by a lot of people he trusts in the Discord, he may look into it, right? And so he asked for like specific examples of what he needs to know if he were to watch. Well, here's a good thing. Roadblock's over. It sort of ended a lot of the storylines that were going on, and there's about to start a whole bunch of new stories heading into Stand and Deliver. I think the only thing that we have Trick and Eddie and Underground next Tuesday. That's the final story heading in before we get to Stand and Deliver. But I do think now's a good time just to get in without having to do a whole bunch of research. I think NXT, the way they present the show, they do a very good job of catching new viewers up during the episode so that you don't have to do the research, right? So that you can enjoy the show, right? And so, but I will say this. If you're going to know anyone on this roster, there's 2 people on this roster that you need to get behind right now. If you're going to watch NXT, Obafemi, Stephanie Vaquer. And guess what? Those are my 2 favorites. And then Fraxium. Those are my 3 favorites on the roster right now. Fraxium, Stephanie Vaquer, Obafemi. Right? And then there's other minor characters. And then when I say minor, I mean non-champions. Jada Parker, Sol Ruka, Trick Williams, Eddie Thorpe even's gotten in my good graces. Ethan Page, Javon Evans. Right, and Shawn Michaels has made it very, very obvious. He wants every person that's on camera to be known and to have a purpose. Right? And so when Carmen Petrovich comes on camera and Shante Adonis is with her, we know why. And there's a reason behind it. And they'll explain it a lot of times on NXT. And a lot of them are self-explanatory, right? But Obafemi, get behind him now. Because that's the next star coming out of NXT. That's the next star. I'm just telling you right now. That is the next star coming out of NXT. Unless Triple H messes up the booking, that's the next main roster superstar. Obafemi. I think he holds this belt the rest of the year. I think he loses it at New Year's Evil next year to some rising star, probably a Javon Evans. Right? And then I think he's in Royal Rumble. And I think I'm going to make a prediction, and I'm not 100% certain on it, but part of me believes Obafemi might be a sleeper to win the Royal Rumble next year. I don't think he will win, but I'm going to put his name in like sleeper category right now. Because I think Jacob Fatu wins. If I had to give a really, really, really early prediction of Royal Rumble 2026, my prediction right now would be Jacob Fatu. But we haven't even got the Mania this year yet. let's enjoy the next 12 months. Right? Yeah, but Obafemi's a beast. And Moose, for being as big as this guy is really athletic and crazy good. Right? I loved every moment of this match. Oba retains, though, which is all we needed. We get to the New York street fight, Javon Evans and Ethan Page. And this is an example of what I talk about when you don't need blood. Like, because I was going to make an AEW rant when I did my AEW stuff about like Tony Storm and Mariah May bleeding. And I took it out, and I'm going to mention it now because I have to. Kyle Fletcher and Ospreay in their cage match was bleeding at Revolution. Like, AEW overuses blood, right? And everyone complains when I say that. And then like, oh, well, we haven't used blood for like 3 Dynamites. Well, you're about to use it again with Moxley. Like, Moxley bleeds like every 2 weeks. Like, there literally was a joke and a meme going around of Moxley on the internet that anytime he was on TV, he was bleeding. Because it felt like every time he was on TV, he was bleeding. The blood in AEW could use blood 0 times for the next 365 days. And it still would not be enough time to make up for the overuse of blood in that company. They do it because the sickos pop for it. Right? But this right here, this street fight between Javon Evans and Ethan Page is an example of how you can do a street fight and not require blood. So when they do use blood in the company, it means something. Because I could go without blood. But if we're going to use it sparingly and use it when necessary. AEW doesn't do that. I'm sorry. They just don't. They use their method is use it as much as possible because it adds to a match. But I look at blood in wrestling the same way I look at sex scenes in movies. Right? Add 0 to the plot. Just put in there to get a response. Right? Add 0 to the plot. Like I'm on this sort of train, if we should say, of I think Hollywood needs to stop putting sex scenes in movies. They don't add to the movie. In fact, I believe at times they take away. Like I went to go watch, this was like 2 years ago, the movie Napoleon, because I'm a history nerd. And I had 0 idea what I was going into. I thought this was going to be a documentary of Napoleon. In this movie, had very little to do about history and a hell of a lot to do about Napoleon's sex life. Because I felt like he was fucking every 2 seconds. It felt like there was a sex scene in this movie every other scene. That movie was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. The worst movie I think I've ever gone to a theater and paid for. There was a part of me about halfway through the movie that was ready to get out and fucking leave. But then I thought, man, I'm at AMC theater. I'm in this comfy chair. I just paid $30 fucking for this fucking movie. I'm gonna bear through this shit, and I'm gonna rant about how bad it was. That movie was awful. Mostly because the sex scenes took away from the movie. And in AEW, the blood takes away from the moments half the time. So this is an example with NXT of how you can do a street fight, not require blood in this match. Not an ounce of blood was required in this match. And it was still a banger. And Javon got his comeuppance. I wish they would have waited a month and give it to us at Stand and Deliver. But I'm fine. We got it here. It appears Ethan's moving on the Ricky Saints. Javon, who knows where he heads off to. I think Javon Evans is going to do, I think he's a character who we can make into the sympathy character. I've talked about the sympathy template and how I don't like it on every character, but I think Javon Evans, being that he doesn't have anything outside of his gimmick, I think you can do the build up from the ground redemption story for him, again, leading off to him winning the Iron Survivor in November or December, and then doing David versus Goliath at New Year's Evil at the beginning of January, and having him beat Obafemi. I think that's where we're headed with Javon Evans. I'll just be completely honest. And then we get to the main event. Julia versus Stephanie Vaquer. Now, I will say this. This was not better than Sasha versus Bayley. I enjoyed the match, though. And moment of the night. So match of the night is Oba Moose, but moment of the night is Stephanie Vaquer being double champion. Because there's only been like 3 or 4 double champions in NXT history, right? And so Stephanie Vaquer is on top of the world right now. Now, the rumor is Julia's hurt. I don't know if that's true or not. We will see. I loved this match, man. I just did. This women's division, objectively, let's just be objective. This women's division in NXT is the best. It's the most consistent. It's the most balanced from top to bottom of the roster. Right? Now there's a power hierarchy. Right? But when you go to main roster WWE, right? You got Rhea and Liv and Bianca and Jade and Naomi. You go down like one tier and you got like Chelsea and Lyra and Piper and Raquel. Then you go down to like the very bottom of the ocean and you got Zelina Vega and Maxine Dupree, who none of us really take very serious, and Ivy Nile, who none of us really, and right now in between there you got other tiers with like Dakota Kai and Io Sky's up here. I forgot to mention her, right? But there's a talent imbalance, right? Where you have like your big stars, your Ios, your Rheas, your Baileys, and then you have a discrepancy and like there's no balance in the roster. You really are really good or you're really bad, right? On Raw and on SmackDown, right? Because on SmackDown, you got your Tiffany's and your Charlottes, right? And then, like, Zelina Vega is on the roster, but no one really thinks she's all that good, right? And your Chelsea Greens are somewhere in the middle, right? But you go to NXT, and there's a hierarchy, definitely, but the entire roster is talented, and I could believe at any point that anyone on TV, if built correctly, could be champion. Like, Carmen Petrovic could beat Stephanie Vaquer for the women's North American champion. And I could believe Carmen Petrovic could be a legitimate champion in the mid-card. Same with Kalani Jordan. Same with Jordan Grace. Same with Jada Parker. Same with Sol Ruka. Same with Zari. And like, there's so many women to be utilized that are talented. It's insane. It's insane. Absolutely insane how talented this women's division is. From top to bottom, one of the best rosters, one of the most consistent rosters. Not the best GM in WWE with Ava. Y'all can fight me on that one. It's just so good. And what a match this was. Right? What a match this was. Now, obviously the confusion comes in. Well, how do we separate the two women's titles? Because it's not a good thing. I'll sit here and say it. This is one of the booking things that I don't like that Shawn Michaels has done. But we knew this was where it was headed. Right? You had to know that when Julie and Stephanie Vaquer debuted at the same time, that both of them are going to get gold and both of them are going to see each other at some point. And so, like, that's going to be the Bayley Sasha of this generation in terms of rivalry. They're always going to be connected to each other, right? That's our Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, right? They're going to be best friends. They're going to be bitter enemies. And we're going to see this match probably 20 times in the next 5 years. And I'm going to love every single time this happens. So the question then comes about, how do we get how do we get Stephanie to not look weak in a loss, to lose that North American Championship? I have an answer, and it's in my prediction for the Stand and Deliver card, right? So I'm going to pull that up real quick. My Stand and Deliver predictable card. So I said Roxanne had one more match. I think it's at Stand and Deliver, and I do think she feuds with Bayley. Excuse me. I think Triple H knows that he can utilize all of WrestleMania weekend. And I thoroughly believe that WrestleMania probably will only have 5 matches a night. And so we'll get a 10-match card because he knows he can use Friday Night SmackDown to debut or to premiere some of, the women's U.S. title and maybe even the U.S. title itself. And he knows he could use Stand and Deliver to get some of these titles and some of these other grudge matches to happen, right? And then he knows he could use Mania to get the big stuff on the 2 nights of Mania within 10 matches, right? And he knows he could use the Raw after to put on some banger matches that could be on, right? Maybe Lyra Valkyria defends her title on the Monday after Mania, right? Because he's going to use the whole weekend, right? So I think what he's going to do, I have 2 matches here that I think are going to utilize main roster superstars on Stand and Deliver. I think it's going to be Roxanne Perez versus Bayley, and the other one is going to be one of 2 matches. It's either going to be Sol Ruca versus Chelsea Green, and I know that's happening on Tuesday, but I theoretically can see Sol Ruca winning that match in an ultimate swerve, because Triple H and I think a lot of that would be Triple H's booking if that happens. Triple H loves to swerve, and it would be an ultimate swerve for Sol Ruca to win the women's U.S. championship, and then have Chelsea Green get her rematch at Stand and Deliver. I think could be the move. That depends on if Sol Ruca wins on Tuesday or not. If Sol Ruca loses, like I kind of actually expect her to do on Tuesday, then I think the actual match at Stand and Deliver is going to be Sol Ruca and Zarya as a tag team versus Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, in a match that I do think Sol Ruca and Zarya will then win at Stand and Deliver. And I think that the goal is to get the women's tag team titles back on NXT, where I think there's a lot more women to utilize for that division, right? Especially with a lot of the women's tag team division sort of on the main roster sort of disintegrating. I think the goal is to get the women's tag team championships back into NXT, where there's a lot more women in a whole division that you could probably just generate by yourself, right? And so I think that's going to be the match. I think we're going to get a North American Championship Vegas street fight between Shawn Spears and Tony D'Angelo. And I think that'll be a good match. I think we'll get a NXT Tag Team Championship ladder match, this time for the NXT Tag Team Championships, not the TNA. Fraxium versus the Hardys in a ladder match. I think we run it through again. I think Fraxium picks up the win here. I think we get the NXT Championship match of Oba Femi versus Trick Williams. And I think Stephanie Vaquer only wrestles 1 match. I know there's a lot of people says, well, she's a double champion. She has to do 2 matches. And realistically, she could. But I don't think we do that. That is not necessary. I think she defends the North American Championship against Jada Parker. And I think Jada Parker wins the match. It's a legitimate threat. I don't think Jada Parker's at the main event level yet. But I could also see this match being for the the women's NXT Championship, in which Stephanie would then win. But I think the best way to take the women's North American off of Stephanie is to have it at Stand and Deliver, her versus Jada Parker, where you can then continue Jada versus Kalani, because Kalani wants her title back. And then you could do Fallon, who wants her title back. And I think there's a lot of women down there who can get their play. And then moving on from Stand and Deliver, you can then move into Stephanie Vaquer versus Jordan Grace for Battleground in Tampa. That's what I thoroughly believe. That's my Stand and Deliver card. That's my Stand and Deliver card right there. All right, so let's talk about Monday Night Raw real quick. I think there's some WWE stands out there who overhype this. I think even the casual fan base, that the community, kind of, to me, overhyped this night. I felt that this was complete utter boring bullshit outside of two segments. And that was Chad Gable's little segment, Who's the Man in the Mask? I think it's Phoenix, which leads to my prediction of Mania, that is going to be Gable, Phoenix, and Penta versus the LWO. I saw where this was headed. This was an obvious, if I can't beat them, join them situation. And it all depended on if Phoenix, I think WWE was playing a game here where they couldn't fully commit to that storyline until they knew Phoenix was going to be released. And as soon as Phoenix got released, now we start to see motion with Chad Gable. I thoroughly believe the other man in the mask is Phoenix. I thoroughly believe Phoenix, Penta, and Chad Gable will team together to take down the LWO. I do think that's going to happen. And that's where I don't know if it'll be on a Mania match, but that may be, and that's what I'm talking about in terms of like Triple H can utilize Raw after Mania to do some big matches, and I think that's where you can debut Phoenix, where Gable comes down, calls out the LWO, says I got two guys here that are and we're gonna have a match, right? You are calling me out. Let's have a match. Right, but the Creed brothers maybe get taken out on the way to WrestleMania, and so Gable has no backup. So we think, and then he said, "Wait, I got two guys," and it says something along the lines like, "If you can't beat them, join them." And Penta comes out by himself, and then looks back at the curtain, and Phoenix comes out. Right, to a big pop on the Raw after Mania. I that's how I envision this happening. I think that's clear. Again, I saw the vision for this one. Wavy D had, he's a Nostradamus. Absolutely not going to take away from his ability to see where storylines are headed. But he doesn't believe me when I said that, when I said updated my card with him, he didn't believe me. This is where we're headed. I think this was obvious where we were headed, right? Punk versus Seth was a good steel cage match. I'm not going to take away from how good it was. There are a couple things though, and Dirty D changed my perspective on this. Like, I listen to his podcast before I do mine on Fridays because he does sort of. I use him as a check and balance because a lot of times I think I do overreact at some things. And then I listen to him and I'm like, yeah, he's right. And one of the things that he said was on his show was, unless you were expecting Roman Reigns, so he didn't expect Roman Reigns to show up. And so that's why he found the match in the false finishes to be okay. Whereas I fully expected Roman Reigns. When they announced the cage match last week, I thoroughly, from that moment, expected Roman Reigns. Right? And because of that, the false finishes felt, because of my expectation of Roman Reigns, the false finishes just felt like stalling to get to Roman Reigns. And so it was the perspective in which I watched the match that didn't make it right. It was a good match. And the false finishes weren't all that annoying. It did add to some drama, right? Where typically false finishes are overused. I think the major issue is that like a company like AEW does false finishes in every match, right? Whereas I'm not excusing it. I do think they did too many. I think at some point finishers need to come back to start meaning something. But Roman coming back and costing Punk the match and beating up Seth and then beating up Punk, we've set up a match for Mania, which leads me to my last statement is we're 5 weeks away from Mania. Why are we not confirming any more matches? This is again why I believe we're only going to have like a 10-match Mania card. I thoroughly believe that. I think Triple H and WWE has recognized that they have essentially 5 shows in 4 days on Mania weekend, between Friday Night SmackDown before Mania, the go home show, that they're going to treat as a Mania special, between Stand and Deliver and Night 1 on Saturday, between Night 2 on Sunday, and between Monday Night Raw. So 5 shows in 4 days that you could do some booking with, right? And I think Triple H has recognized that, and you don't have to put everything on the card for WrestleMania. And so I think there are going to be some things left off WrestleMania that will get on Friday Night SmackDown or Monday Night Raw. I thoroughly believe that. But Punk, Roman, Seth will not be one of those things. I think that main event's night 1. I do. Speaking of events that happened WrestleMania weekend, as we move on from Monday Night Raw, the Hall of Fame has been announced that it will not take place in the arena the Friday before WrestleMania in T-Mobile Arena. They've moved it to some other venue, but I don't know who the fuck gonna be there, because $700 tickets. This is why this is. I saw the video, and I wish I saved it so that I could put it on React to it. But I saw the video saying that WWE being super high priced may be their downfall. I don't know. I don't think it's going to kill the company, but I think eventually they'll come to realize that they've priced out the big fans. But part of me also believes this is Endeavor trying to make back the money that they spent to buy the company. And then so the company that I work for just merged 2 years. It's coming up on 2 years. They did a merger with another big brand in the industry we're in. I'm not going to name names because I'm not going to dox myself, right? But it became a bigger financial burden than they thought it was. And so what I've seen at work now is that we're starting to raise rates at a higher percentage than we have in the past, to make up some of this money that the company lost in the merger, right? And so I think that this is what it could be, is that we may have overpriced events for 2 to 3 years to sort of make up that money Endeavor lost in the merger. And then I think eventually the market will stable out, and the common fans could come back to these shows. That's my hope. That's my hope. It could just be Endeavor's greedy, and they're pricing out the big fans, and you're going to have to pay big money to go to wrestling shows. And if that's the case, I'm just going to watch from the comfort of my television, right? So then the last thing is the last thing I was going to talk about, like my thoughts on Mania, but I just sort of gave you that, right? I think we're going to have a 10-match card. I think we'll have the big feuds on it. I think we'll have some other event. I think even like a Braun Breaker could be pushed to Raw after Mania. I think the mid card, there's a reason Triple H isn't booking it to feel important for Mania. It's because he's not trying to make it feel important, because it's not going to be on Mania. It's just going to be on Raw and SmackDown. And so I think LA Knight's going to defend on SmackDown. I think Breaker's on Raw. I think Chelsea Green and Lyra will defend on their respective shows. I think the Mania card will be the 4 matches it'll be Tiffany and Charlotte. It'll be Bianca, Rhea, and Io. I do believe that'll be a triple threat, unless the reports or rumors that Rhea may miss Mania. I don't think those are true. I do think this will be because Rhea's been going back and forth with Bianca. That leads me to believe this will be a triple threat. And so it'll be Tiffany, Charlotte, the triple threat for the Raw women's between Bianca, Io, and Rhea. We'll have Gunther, Jay, Cody, Cena, Roman, Seth, and Punk. Probably Damian and Drew. looks like AJ Styles and Logan Paul will probably do another grudge match with like a Solo versus Jacob story. I could see maybe a tag team classic for the SmackDown belts. I don't think the Raw belts get defended because I don't know what the hell's going on with that story. And then and so I think we'll get 10 matches. I do. I think we'll get 10 matches. On Mania, and that's it. And so I've sort of come around to being okay with that. So let's move on to react to that. And I told you we have a triple threat of action here, and we're going to start with a podcast known as the Triple Threat Podcast. And I'm calling names out. I told you the gloves are off. The gloves are off. And these people, these are brilliant minds. I'm being sarcastic, but look, these people annoy the living fuck out of me. And I don't give two fucks if they respond or whatever. I don't care. These are the people. Let me set up why I don't care about these people. This is the podcast who single-handedly sent their followers to mass report me to TikTok because they disagreed with my opinion about what Johnny boy here had to say. I call out names, Johnny and Marissa, single-handedly sent their TikTok or their audience in their Discord to mass report me because they disagreed with a TikTok that I made in response to something Johnny said. Single-handedly removed a major portion of my followers because I was being blocked and mass reported, and there were strikes on my account. I ended up having to delete the whole account because I literally would get 0 views. Right? And so, yeah, I have a little bit of disdain for these people. But I also have disdain for them because, especially Marissa here, and you'll see why. This is that example that I was telling you of someone who doesn't understand wrestling nor storytelling. And I'm just going to play the clip, and y'all going to see what I'm talking about.
Roman.
That's what he's waiting for.
Yeah, and there's Roman, which technically Seth wins. I like the way they did that.
So wait, was that to give him the win?
I mean, it's going to inadvertently. See, Roman's going to realize he fucked up. I don't even think Roman cares that much. Yeah, Roman didn't give a fuck about this match.
Wait, okay, so am I dumb?
What?
Why?
Because he wants Seth.
Oh, just because he wants
Yeah, he wants to beat the shit out of Seth. He don't give a fuck if Punk loses.
But I guess my thing is, like, is this not, like, a little random? Like, they haven't interacted in so long. So
no, it's not random because Seth's the one that took him out. At the Rumble.
This is what I'm talking about. And Johnny understood. He filled her in. But she's the type of wrestling fan that I was talking about earlier in the show that's a little bit newer to the product, doesn't understand how wrestling works, and clearly doesn't understand storytelling. Am I dumb? Yes. But why? Do you not remember Royal Rumble? Like, come on, man. This was clear and obvious why Roman Reigns attacked Seth Rollins. Where's the disconnect with you? I don't get it. I don't get how anyone could understand when Roman Reigns pops up to beat up Seth Rollins. This is random. They literally interacted 2 months ago. Do you not remember? Seth Rollins curb stomped Roman Reigns' head through the damn stairs. Do we not remember the Royal Rumble? Come on, man. This is storytelling. And now Roman has a problem with Punk and Seth. I can't wait for that match. I'm pumped about that match. I'll be honest with you. I'm pumped for it. Right? So that's segment number 1. Section number 2 is Bully Ray on Travis Scott. And Bully Ray, after Travis Scott inadvertently, on accident, hurt Cody Rhodes, Bully Ray went out and said a quote. I thought I had it saved. I could have been lying to myself. Scott has one coming for him. Here it is. He says, Travis Scott deserves to have his jaw shattered and wired shut. When the mark in the ring decides he's a professional wrestler and knows what the hell he's doing, and that mark is Travis Scott. Dude, because Travis Scott decided he was going to look like some tough guy in front of the whole world. You've got one coming, Travis, and I hope it's from Cody. If it's not from him, I hope I never see you one day. Travis Scott basically responded and said, I'll do the same thing I did to Cody to you. Now, here's the thing. Bully Ray acts like a tough guy. And I'm sure Bully Ray could beat the shit out of me. And I'm sure he could beat the shit out of Travis Scott. But Bully Ray ain't going to do jack shit if he saw Travis Scott because he knows not to. Bully Ray, I also think, does a lot of things to get a response. I do. But I just thought that that's crazy. I thought that that was a crazy response to obviously obviously this was planned. I just don't think it was executed the way they wanted to. But that brings up the whole conversation. Did Travis Scott have to be in that segment? Right? Now, the last thing here on React to that is it's from a football podcast. But it proves a point. The mainstream audience finds Tony Khan, AEW, and everything Tony Khan touches to be absolutely a joke. And this is just an example of it.
I don't think the Jaguars will ever get it. And one of the reasons they'll never get it is because the owner's son, who runs the team, also runs AEW and writes all the scripts for it every week. And I just don't think they're on the ball, is my take.
Literally, Tony Khan, the son of the owner of the Jags, showed up, I think last year's draft, was it, where he had the neck brace from whatever they were doing at AEW?
Yeah, because you're doing an AEW bit, yeah.
Yeah, which is a good summation of how the Jags are run. But yeah.
Tony, you're being laughed at, dude. What are you doing? This is why I've always said, Tony Khan can solve the problem with his soccer team, with his football team, with his wrestling promotion. If he did one thing, there's a common denominator for why why all three of those products are ass right now. The Jaguars have arguably one of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time as their quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who until we got to the pros had only lost one game in his entire life. And that was a national championship against the Joe Burrow-led LSU Tigers, which was a historically great team. It had Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and a whole lot of other talent on it. That was the only game in Trevor Lawrence's life he has ever lost. Until we got to the pros, got drafted by the Jaguars, and now everyone thinks Trevor Lawrence it sucks, but it isn't Trevor Lawrence. It's the front office. It's Tony Khan, who spends way more time writing wrestling scripts than caring about. I haven't seen the Jaguars do one thing in free agency in the NFL this year so far, this week when it opened. Haven't seen a single thing that they've done that benefited the team. Since Trevor Lawrence has been there, he's supposed to be the savior. They've never made the playoffs. They're consistently, for the last 10 years that the Khans have owned the team, they're consistently top 10 draft picks, several number 1 draft picks, never in the playoffs. Here's a solution. Stop having Tony run the team. Their soccer team is a joke. The fans hate Tony Khan. Hey, get a director of operations for the soccer team who knows how to run soccer. And Tony Khan, stop getting your hands dirty. sit back and just own the team. And with AEW, the product's ass. This is not reaching a mainstream market. Here's a common sense. Maybe hire a director of operations for that as well, who knows wrestling and can write for you, and maybe write some interesting shit. And just step back. If Tony Khan stepped back from all three of those products and hired a mind that was good in each one of those products, I'm sure they will turn around pretty quickly. The common denominator is Tony Khan. So let me know what y'all think. I know this was a super long episode, but a lot of these things had to be said. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for joining and doing this journey with me here on the Slapping Me Wrestling podcast. Until next Tuesday, when we come back and me and Wavy D are back here to give you the rundown of Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. Let me know what you all think. Like, share, subscribe. Leave us a rating if you're listening on audio, and we will see you guys on Tuesday with the next episode of the Slapping Me Wrestling podcast.
So hit that subscribe, come along for the ride. AEW, WE, we're always on side. From fantasy booking to baddies that slay. Slapping Me Wrestling every Tuesday.